Everybody's good? I know people are still kind of coming in from the break. For the folks that I haven't met yet, my name is Billy Biggs. Relatively new to TechnoMile. I've been here 30 days. I'm the new Chief Revenue Officer responsible for the sales team and go-to-market, so super excited to be here. I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is we're only about 2 hours away from cocktails, 3 sessions. You guys made it. You're very close. The bad news is the bartender got sick. So that means Ashish is going to be cooking up cocktails for all of us in about 2 hours, okay? So I kid, the bartender did not get sick. So with me today, I have a wonderful panel on a topic that I'm personally passionate about in growth. We're going to talk about tips, tricks, things they've learned along the way in their careers, focused on growth, and really what I would call an interesting opportunity in the federal government now. We've talked about the administration shift, et cetera. With me, Lyndsey Vice President of Business Development for Tech Dev Group. I have Jay Shah, former COO of Octo Group. And then I have Mike King, the Chief Revenue Officer for Peraton Group. So Lyndsey, I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Okay, great. Thank you, Billy. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Lyndsey Ho. I'm the Vice President of Business Development and Growth at Dev Technology. A little bit about my role at Dev. So we are a mid-sized company. We just recently graduated the small business program. And definitely still in that growing mid-size, small space. So I'm in charge of all outward BD, proposal operations, IDIQ operations, and marketing all falls within my purview. So I'll start there, and then we can dive right into questions.
Yeah. Great. Hello, everybody. Jay Shah. Up until about 10 months ago, I was the Chief Operating Officer for Octo. I spent 15 years at Octo, really from startup through mid-size, through the private equity exit in 2019, where I shifted into the Chief Operating Officer role and spent the last 4 years doing 4 acquisitions and ultimately a really fabulous exit to IBM. So last 10 months I've been enjoying downtime. This is the first time I've had to put on a suit. I'm glad it still fits. But during my time at Octo, as is the case with all smalls, really kind of going through those journeys, played a lot of different roles, driving growth and having to figure out as we did acquisition how to integrate the growth teams and really make sure we were maximizing the value out of that. So looking forward to the panel.
Great.
So Mike King, I'm Executive Vice President and Chief Growth Officer of Peraton. I started when we were an $850 million company, so on the large end of mid-sizes, and now we're a $7 billion company, primarily through some massive acquisitions that we were able to do and a couple divestitures along that way. And my responsibility is kind of threefold. One, running all aspects of the business to make sure the trains run on time as part of the executive leadership team. 2, all of the organic growth activities of the company and our outward-facing appearance of the organization. And 3, working with my private equity partner to try to get to that great outcome. And helping, whether it's for my company or actually, quite frankly, the rest of our portfolio companies that they support in looking at mergers, acquisitions, and the like.
Great. Welcome. Appreciate you guys being here. Mike, let's start with you. Obviously, $850 million to $7 billion. I mean, that's a huge portfolio, but maybe talk a little bit about the top 2 or 3 challenges your teams are facing on growth right now in the federal market, and perhaps maybe some key elements on working against those challenges, or what are they doing to mitigate the risk around those challenges?
Certainly, and I think the challenges maybe are the same in some ways across all sizes and scales of our organizations. One is our customers buying differently, like way differently, right? Tech challenges, the way that we go through procurement processes. Procurement process before used to be, if I can do a 24-month capture, position myself for an opportunity, and I go through writing a proposal and go through that process. Now, I may be in a proposal process for 9 months, which is a little bit nutty if you think about the traditional models of how we've had to do that. So we've had to adapt and adjust those sort of things. The other thing for us at scale is I can't go after $10 million jobs, right? I can do 150 $10 million jobs, win all of them, and add 4% to the bottom of the company, or I can chase 10 deals that are $1 billion plus opportunities, have wins and losses on those, but have much different impact in the organization. So for me, coming from a company that was look, we were $850 million and we were bidding about 2x of our annual revenue coming out when we were pulled out of Harris Corporation. And we had a book-to-bill for 3 years of about a 0.7. Right? At that point in time, the way that you approach your business is vastly different than how you approach it once you're a $7 billion company and you're doing integration of basically 6 different firms and focusing on those aspects. So I think they're kind of the biggest challenges that we have right now. For me, it's still the culture of a forming company and the belief system that we have to execute the business. And on the customer side, the drastic change that they've gone through in acquisition approach. We all understand the value of OTAs now. We all understand tech challenge and how to work through tech challenge type things. And then the difference of buying commercial at speed and scale, which is non-normal for companies of our size and scale.
Lyndsey, I know you're a materially different company than $7 billion, right? You graduated obviously to the enterprise. We talked about the competitive landscape, but maybe just talk about some of the challenges your team has now from going from that small woman-owned business to the enterprise level that you guys are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know a lot of smalls out there. The moment you graduate, you lose that sweet spot of that small business socioeconomic status. So any of your vehicles or your task orders under vehicles that you currently have as small business, you're immediately up against a challenge. When my recompete comes out, how am I going to deal with this? Am I going to try to convince my client to get it to go unrestricted, which is a mountain to climb? Am I going to create a JV so that I can continue to capture that work in some capacity as a small business? And then another aspect of it is you are competing against the Peratons, the Leidos, the Lockheeds of the world. And we always say at Dev, vehicle is king. So how are you going to go and continue to get on these very large IDIQ vehicles to stay in the game and stay relevant when all these vehicles are scorecards, which can really hurt mid-sized companies? So there's been a lot of strategy around strategic joint ventures. CTAs all of a sudden are the next big thing. If you can't do it alone, you're combining a CTA with another mid-sized company and tackling more and more deals. I do think another thing internally is when you go from a small to a mid, you have a lot of folks that have been there since there was 5 people. It is culturally and process-wise very different when you're going to a company that's over 300 people. So that is actually why they brought me into Dev, to really drive more processes from large company that I've gathered. And that's been a little bit of a cultural hurdle to get over in the past year and a half.
So real quick to double back on that, the resources that may be uncomfortable with that growth, what kind of position do you find yourself in? Obviously, some people want to get off the bus at a certain point. Have you had to exit certain folks, had difficult conversations? Because not everybody wants to grow 30 or 40 or 50% year over year.
Exactly. There have been some resources that have exited on their own. Small business was just where their heart was. They loved that 20 to 100 person company feel. And quite frankly, our team felt that impact. There was a lot of negativity on the team from those people, even though resource-wise they were phenomenal. So I have had 1 or 2 resources exit on their own. It worked out. We did have many hard conversations about attitude, about impact on the team, about what it means to grow, and still have great relationships with those people today, but they're back at small businesses doing what they love. And then we were able to then bring in new resources that we could really mold to get to the next level.
Great. Jay, let's go to you. I know you've been out of the game for 10 months working on your golf game, but I'm really interested in some of the KPIs as a revenue leader that maybe you've looked at in the past or put in place to really drive success around growth and really focus on areas of improvement of the business.
Sure. Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways I bridge the gap between the stories of my fellow panelists here. So I think pre-acquisition for Octo, and really through the M&A process, we were really focused on our technical differentiation and capability differentiation. And so the challenge that most businesses have, and this gets into one of the metrics we captured, is you want the home runs, right? You want the big 20, 30, 50, $100 million deals with your new capabilities, but we realized we need base hits first. So one big metric we had was really around organic on-contract growth, and really demonstrating to the company, because there's a lot of anxiety as you grow for people to accept that BD and growth is everyone's job and not just, the BD team or the capture team. And a lot of staff, especially if they come to a startup, have anxiety with that. So really trying to demystify the importance of growth by putting on the same pedestal, getting 10 bodies on a contract and having 5 of those, that's like winning a 50-person contract. And so if I win a 50-person contract, they're equally valuable. So having these metrics around driving organic growth and making sure that it was not devalued less than winning a big contract. So that was a big area of metrics that we had. Obviously, as we grew, really focusing our MPJVs and mobilizing them, we had a number of KPIs and metrics, not just to use it as a defensive tool, as most, protecting your own recompetes when you grow, but also thinking about how to use it as an offensive tool. And often that means it's likely a different partner. So how do we have the right metrics in place to get everyone comfortable with the MPJV, which can be a very complicated and challenging paradigm when you sometimes feel like you're doing 90% of the work for 60% of the return or 40% of the return. So having the company understand the importance of those metrics for us to grow. And then, as we got larger and captured more of the traditional metrics, things like book to bill, obviously became an important metric for us as we were thinking about the quality of our pipeline.
But you have actually a great story about Sunday nights, right? I'd love for you to tell the audience sort of how, from an operating rhythm perspective, pipeline review, deal review, what you implemented that I think was pretty effective. So
Sure. Yeah. This was, everyone hated, the dreaded pings on their phone when they're getting messages from the COO. So TechnoMile was a big part of our growth story from when we were small to growing, and really an important tool as we integrated pipeline from the acquisitions we did and kind of harmonizing that. And so, for us, the culture was very important for everyone to have accountability towards the deals they owned and the actions they took. And so, I got very used to the chatter feature with our TechnoMile implementation, and for all the deals that I would listen into, the previous week, there'd be a series of action items that the capture or BD or the P&L teams had to follow, and I would check on the status of those on a Sunday. And in cases where things weren't moving, when it came time for the next governance review to talk about the deal, if actions weren't closed, I wouldn't let them present. And so I'd say, you have stuff that you need to do, so get that done and we can talk about it at the next meeting. And it created I think, maybe they don't think, the appropriate amount of pressure to have accountability. And after the first time, we never had a case where someone didn't have their actions closed out. So I think having that discipline and rigor and making sure all that information's in one place so someone could look at it very quickly and not have to bug 5 people for the update. Our culture really got used to centralizing that data, which made our governance so much more effective.
That's funny, because I would just close their opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I do on Sundays.
Yeah.
I go in, and if their information's not accurate, I'll just go and I'll put it in error status.
Yeah.
And be like, I wonder how long it's going to take for this person to realize that I've messed with their pipeline.
Okay, I feel better about my style then, if that's how you do it.
Mike, curious from your perspective on KPIs at Peraton, and then maybe a subset of that question, how you think about on-contract growth versus net new. Is a dollar? Is there more focus on one or the other? So maybe start with the KPIs and then get into the subset.
Yeah, so our KPIs have really morphed and continue to morph over time, right? It's always, in the end, it comes down to book to bill for me and how we're doing on book to bill. But again, when we inherited a company that was not bidding enough and had a horrible book to bill, it was all about, I'll bid anything. So my KPI was just get me over a 1.0 book to bill, and we were spaghetti against a wall, right? And trying to get to a point where we were at least being able to show growth. The KPI I really care about is win rate. So dollar win rate, not number win rate, but dollar win rate is what's important to me. And I have different ones for if it's takeaway compared to if it's a brand new business or recompete and all those sorts of things. That's probably my most important KPI from looking at the health of, are we doing the things we need to do in capture, or are we doing the things we need to do in business development to be successful as an organization? Because if my win rate's really low, that means I've got a process thing I need to go address. And that process thing may very well be in the operations of my programs where I'm not giving myself the opportunity to win, or it may be that we're not executing in the timely fashion that we need to do all the steps that you have to do to be successful, so that when the customer wants to look at your bid, they look at you through the glasses that they see themselves, right? And so to me, that's the easiest KPI for us to stare at. As far as sources of revenue, we spend a lot of time on the value of all sources of revenue. I am just as, I want us to get sources of revenue by changing my amount that is subcontracted compared to what is done internally. I want to have that just one more on a project. It's just as important for large business as it is for small business to push on those things down at the PM who's executing a $20 million program, right? And for them to understand the value of that. At my level and what I'm focused on, because I got 5 sectors who run their organizations and a team of about 500 people across that organization in support from the growth perspective. But as far as I'm concerned, they're embedded in their sectors, right? And it's those guys who have to go drive that sort of stuff. What I'm looking at is, what's my win rates? How much are we hitting the timely engagement? Because it's about, to me, train, equip, and execute and evaluate. From my perspective, it's their job to be down in the organization doing the job. It's for me to put the structures in place to allow them to be successful. But on sources of revenue, it doesn't matter if it's on contract growth, new business, extensions, because I love contracts that I already have.
Right.
And then the biggest challenge that I push on is, once we win a contract and we have ceiling, don't let that ceiling go to waste. Maximize that ceiling potential as much as you possibly can, because it's a heck of a lot easier to enhance your revenue by doing that than it is to go take something else away from somebody.
Let's shift gears here a little bit, Lyndsey. I know you've graduated status, you've doubled your team, as we talked about. The role of technology internal to DevTech. Maybe talk about some of the tech that you've implemented internally to drive that growth, to support go-to-market marketing. I know you have a large functional team, right? Any examples that you've implemented on the tech, and we can talk AI. I think we talked last week about some of the AI tools out there. Any examples for the folks that you know?
Absolutely. And obviously not shocking because we're at a TechnoMile conference, but we did implement TechnoMile about 4 to 6 months ago. I'll start there, then I'll move into AI. So, and one thing that it's really helped as far as process is concerned, automation, is actually pipeline health and KPIs. So we built out those, we're able to now automate them. I can hit a button, run some reports, and we do monthly pipeline health reviews as a part of our very large BD meetings that has all functions of the company in it. So that's been great, because previously that was a lot of time on my end, manually hand jamming some things. And then most recently, we've, much like a lot of folks in here probably, we did implement an AI proposal tool very cautiously when we implemented it. And I do think one of the keys to the success in implementing that is I chose someone on my team that wasn't a super senior level person that was in a million meetings, pulled in different directions. I picked someone who had a passion for AI. She's actually one of our technical proposal writers, but loves technology, loves AI, and gave it 100% of her attention, and she's really helped implement and drive that for the company. It was a little unconventional. Typically, I would have picked someone senior to implement it, but because she's been able to find all the bugs in the system and help when we have hallucinations to fix things, she's been really able to train our team on how to use the AI tool. I will say we do not just hit a button and then submit to the government. That to me is terrifying. But it gets us RFI drafts when we need them in 12 hours. First round of ping team that we can massage and fix. And then lastly, we are internally, we are partially a Microsoft shop. So our Microsoft shop is creating us a BD bot, because a lot of times everyone in the company is constantly tapping on my team. Where do I find this? Where do I find that? And our team is creating a bot so that now the entire company can go to this bot, ask their BD question, and get their answer before coming to our team and kind of taking away time from us.
So I heard 2 things there. You would never submit an AI-generated RFP to the government.
Never.
And that it's impossible to grow without TechnoMile. Those are the 2 things. Just want to make sure I'm clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Jay, any additional thoughts on just tech that maybe you've rolled out in the past,
Sure.
whether successful or maybe unsuccessful?
Yeah, we piloted For my time there, we piloted a few other AI proposal tools. I think with a bigger emphasis on how do we really unpack the past performances, specifically because every acquisition we would do would refresh a whole series of past performances that we then needed to smartly think about. But the reality is, I think where we really unlocked most of our value to solve that problem was, good old-fashioned, PMRs, right? I mean, we ensured that our growth teams and had enough individuals who were really responsible for cross-selling, because the easiest thing is to sell existing capabilities to existing customers, and every acquisition we would do, we would add, a handful of capabilities. And so in that regard, we didn't really use technology as much as we just really focused hard on the integration and making sure that we had the appropriate cross-sharing of information. And then back to the metrics, we did track KPIs around clients that didn't have density with, say, a set of capabilities, and then built campaigns around those. And an important part of it is making sure our incentive structure truly incentivized the behaviors that we wanted to upsell to those customers.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about talent acquisition and development, right? Actually, humans, resources. Are there certain skills or competencies? We'll start with you, Jay, and then I'd love, Mike, your view on this. Skills or competencies where you found most critical in your growth teams, particularly over the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, I think really figuring out. I mean, there's always going to be a need for that tip of the spear, quote BD engine that is really, the individuals that understand the clients, can get to them and can connect with them. And the reality is the vast majority of them we had lived in the line. They lived in our programs. And so part of that comment I made before about demystifying growth, first we had to get our talent base to understand that growth is not, cold calling and picking up, that's the perception, and everybody's like, well, that's not for me. I'm a program manager. I'm a technical architect. So demystifying that and really looking for those gemstones that we had that lived in the line and figuring out how to give them the appropriate training, get them out of utilization. So always having customer intimacy was there, but I think we did a better job of unlocking that. And I'd say, for us solution architects and really, candidly, we built our best solution architects. Because those, again, were the individuals that they're not the smartest people in the room, they're the greatest storytellers. They have to be able to get to a whiteboard and decompose and storytell. They aren't the smartest developer, the smartest network person, the smartest cloud person. So I think those were bigger investments. I'd say we were a little bit later in the, quote, traditional capture. We did that pretty well because we had enough discipline to stay rigorous. But that, and then last piece is, to his point, the technology focus, tech challenges. We invested a lot in not just preparing for a tech challenge, but having that team practice multiple times, because you're never going to get that team to operate at full capacity. So really having enough indirect investment to allow us to do internal tech challenges to prepare for the big ones that were for the competition.
Right, which is an entirely different skill set than the
Completely
more
different.
traditional captures, right? And so you had to
Completely
learn that
different.
along the way. To your point, you found more value in developing those folks internally than bringing them in perhaps out, externally.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mike, we'd love your thoughts on this. I know $7 billion, we talked about, you guys have an entire growth academy focused on sort of ongoing learning and development. So thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, and we built that growth academy because, again, multiple different organizations. We had the benefit of a lot of the people who came from big companies, and they were all already experienced in how to do things a certain way, and all we wanted to do was put our tweaks on that of the way that we thought it was important to do for the organization. But that academy became really important to me because it trains the people who are not in business development in our organization. So over the past year and a half, we've probably had 500 people who've gone through it. At least half of those people are not in growth because I'm getting frontline leaders and the rest trained in the basics and the understanding of those sorts of things. And that allows us to also find those gems who are down in the organization that you can pull out and say, hey, hold on, you have an acumen for this, or somebody who really shows that they have interest in it, and then turn them into somebody inside the organization actually responsible for growth. So that's been really important for us, and we build it along multiple lines, whether it's a basic training curriculum or a very specific training curriculum for capture managers and capture teams. So trying to pull, if you're going to do tech challenges, pull those people together, give them 6 months of understanding of what it means to go do that as they lead into whatever going to be their future approach that they're working on. Or it's our solution architects. and how do we train our solution architects the way that you got to be this generalist while at the same time being deep enough and creative enough so you can be at that whiteboard and do the things that you were talking about. So all of those kind of go in the training. On the how do you acquire people, we have an advantage, obviously, because of size and scale, that I like going to my larger counterparts, the Lockheed Martins and the Northrops and the like, and trying to get people who have gone through that basic educational experience. One of the reasons why you got pulled into the organization you're in now is because you got kind of trained that way, right? And if you can find somebody with 5, 7, 10 years of experience on that, and then you can just take the benefit of that education and pull it into your organization, I think is pretty effective.
Second question on that, is there a % of your BD growth budget that you dedicate to training and upskilling folks? Or is it, how do you think about that as a cost of revenue perhaps?
It is part of my budget planning.
It's part of
on
your
an
budget
annual
planning?
basis, absolutely, yeah.
Great. Lyndsey, you had a perspective on this when we spoke about culture and sort of hustle versus experience. I'd love to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started at Dev, including myself, we were a team of 4. And now we're a team, I have 10, so I make 11. So that's big growth in 6 years as far as a BD team is concerned. And one thing I have honed in on very specifically in building this team is 100% team dynamic. So, it doesn't help if everyone gets along to the point where we're all nodding their heads yes, even if the leader's making a bad decision. So we have really good feedback and open communication when it comes to, I don't know if that's a good idea, but it's a healthy team environment. We all know at a company of our size, you're wearing all hats. I mean, I was literally writing a proposal last night at 10 o'clock. So everyone's willing to take on different roles outside of their swim lane. So flexibility was huge in that culture. And then for me, when hiring and adding on to my team, it wasn't necessarily always about the hotshot, super senior person that had been doing BD for 35 years, I'll say. It, for me, was maybe that junior to mid entry level employee that had the grit, they were hungry. I can't teach drive and hunger, but I can teach you a process and how to mold with a team. So that was huge. And then my team always has the final say. I make the input, I make the recommendation. If they don't feel the person's a fit, we don't move forward.
So if you had to say, your experience, do you feel like you've hired more appropriately on experience or potential?
Potential,
Potential.
for sure.
Jay, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think, and I think my attitude's changed on this as the company size has grown, but, I think hustle and experience are often inversely proportionate, right? So, I mean, I definitely love the idea of finding the person who is five or 6 years of experience, but still has that hunger, because often they don't go hand in hand. Again, a lot of the success we had was for folks that were team-oriented and wanted to put up the fight.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would just share that I've made more poor hires in the last 5 years based on just experience alone versus that potential. As long as you have the management capacity to train, mentor, coach along the way, if you don't have time for that, it probably isn't going to work.
I think it's a really interesting way to think about it, because the ones that we get most excited about is when you see somebody with potential who doesn't maybe fit the mold, right? And they're the ones that I have to go back and fight with HR and say, no, I'm going to hire that person as a senior capture manager or a senior capture, but they don't fit the requirement. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, here, give me their resume. I'll rewrite it so it fits the requirements, right?
Hopefully there are no HR professionals in the room.
Yeah, but it's because when you see that potential, regardless of what the person's background was prior to, you're going to invest in them as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you bring somebody in who's just the expert, then you go, okay, you're the expert, go be the expert. And then if they don't succeed, I haven't invested as much in them at the same time. So
yeah, I think when I get this question often, someone will ask for advice. I said, I've got, big investment next year for our roadmap. I have $1 million in indirects. Like, I want to hire a couple of gray hairs, and I'll say that because I have plenty of gray hair. And I inevitably will say, if you can reinvest in just utilization relief of people that have the hustle, have the aptitude and attitude, you'll get a lot more ROI out of that. And you won't be frustrated because to the point, your expectations are so high that I just dropped X amount. So, they better make it rain in 3 months, the expectations.
I'm glad you said gray hair because when we spoke, you said gray beard, and I felt it personally. So.
Yeah.
Can I add, I just
Absolutely.
want to add one more thing. And
Please.
I think also what's really important too is, incentivizing those people, whether it be finding out what is an incentive to them. Yes, of course, monetary incentives are great and many people appreciate those, but some people just want time off, right? BD is a rough organization to be in, so finding that balance, giving people time off when they need it. And I think we have been really focusing in on those type of incentives and down to the program level to get people to want to come back and help BD again.
One other quick thing just on the resourcing, because this is another thing that, as you're building your roadmaps and thinking about the number of deals you need to win to hit whatever run rate you want to have, recognizing that, you get a lot of ROI if you really dive further into the specifics of the deals you're bidding. So, I just talked about how I'll take hustle over experience, not if I'm bidding a FedSim deal.
Right.
If I'm bidding a FedSim deal, I want the people who've done that, right? So when we're doing our resource planning, when we're doing our annual planning, our proposal lead would even get down to talking about what were highly complex versus medium complex versus low complex deals, and then say, I can only assign 2 proposal managers to these, and then you're doing the cross your fingers that all the schedules work. But I think it is healthy to get down to that level of rigor around your growth schedule and evaluating that level of complexity, because you might think you need X and you really have overinvested, or you need Y. And from small business to medium to large, it's always and I know this because for all of you that have founder-based businesses, their aperture for what they want to bid is directly related to capacity. Yeah. So all of a sudden, like, probability of win is just a flag that I move up and down. Do you have capacity to bid or not? Which is not, when you're small, that's obviously part of the game. When you're much larger, you need to have better discipline around that. But I think those are things you factor into with your resource planning.
Great. Mike, let's round this out. Let's talk about collaboration. Again, I think about how big you guys are. Obviously, collaboration is key, but how do you ensure alignment among the multiple teams that you have responsibility for everything that's capturing growth?
I turn off TechnoMile records. One of the ways that we have done it in our organization is we took everything that fundamentally touches growth as a daily function and put it in one organization. And that's everything from our technology and engineering organization, the CTO-ish function, our communications functions, our pricing functions of the organization, which would typically sit in the CFO's office. And we pulled those things and put it into a single construct so that we could create collaboration amongst those teams. But for me, I spend my time focused on a common belief system. I really, again, I've got heritage organizations that go back to EDS and portions of Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin in the SI Corporation, and people with really embedded cultures in their histories. So I'm not so much focused on trying to create a Peraton culture as I am a Peraton belief system of what we want to do. And if I can get us to be really disciplined at our core and really creative on the edge and create a set of tools and systems and processes that allow people to access information across the company, that's probably the biggest challenge that we have. You're talking about AI earlier and how you use tools or capabilities to find the data and prepare the data so that it's useful to our organization, whether that's line organizations who have to do their own growth activities or it's growth teams who are going after billion-dollar programs and being able to identify how to do things. I got a great story of a recent capture that we did, which kind of highlights what we're trying to do in the organization and to create a culture and a dynamic of being able to share information. So we went after a job that had 15 different technical categories that you had to respond to, and I forced the company to bid the job. I forced us because I had 2 sectors who didn't do any capture on the thing, and it came up, and I knew it was an important contract vehicle, and I wanted it. So I said, guys, you're doing it anyway. I don't really care. So you're going to be the lead sector. You're going to be the follow sector. We're going to figure out how to do this. And when it was brought to my attention first, it was great. There's these 15 categories. We need to partner for 14 of them. And I need to go find business partners. And I said, hold on a second. Let's make sure that we understand this. So we did old-fashioned kind of shoe leather and using the tools that we had. By the time we got done with that process, we needed one partner for one aspect of an area. And we were able to take capabilities from across the company to position for this opportunity. We won the job recently. We now have a spot on something I think is pretty important for the company. And it's one of those things that had opened the eyes of organizational components that didn't typically see that before, right? And they said, no, we can't do this. And I'm like, no, you can. Just go talk to this person or go talk to that person. And the tool that works the best inside of our company is Teams. Because when you're asking questions to people on Teams or whatever other kind of tool you have similar to that inside your organization, nobody asks for a charge code. They just give you a response, which is great. And then you can build from there. So
the team didn't want to go after the job. You made them go after the job. You won the job.
Yep.
How many other jobs are you going after in 25 they don't want to go, but you know you're going to win? A few?
Let's hope I don't want to repeat that performance. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. Lyndsey, I'll give you a last word on collaboration here before we open up to questions from the audience.
Yeah, for sure. I have a kind of a similar story on a vehicle that still is yet to be awarded, but we needed a health IT requirement, and we were like, well, we don't have one. And I blasted the entire company. And I was like, I know it's out there somewhere, and someone responded, and we were able to bid because of that.
There you go.
And we would never have thought to just do an all email blast before. But from like a macro level in collaboration, at a mid-sized company, it really is important that everyone understands and is speaking the same language when it comes to your growth goals. So every year we do annual planning with an executive team expanded. So we have an executive team at the company, and then we decided to go 2 levels down, invited into that meeting. And it's gotten pretty large. It's over 40 people now in that room. And we are, as a group, coming up with our growth goals for the year. That includes the revenue goal for the year, people goals, technology goals, all the things. And everyone is in that room coming up with a common set of goals that we're going to walk forward together with. And then we all break out into our groups. But we're constantly collaborating on teams. We have quarterly meetings to see, hey, your goal is a priority for me. So if you don't get that done, I can't do my job. And then we push that all the way down to the lowest level employee so that everyone understands where we're going as a company and where we're not going as a company. Because there's nothing worse in a mid-sized company when you get a lot of chatter or those spaghetti against the walls when you really need to stay focused.
Good. We got a couple minutes. Wanted to open up to the audience for any questions from our panelists. Do we have a mic in the back? Do you have a mic? Sir?
I have a question for you, Mike. Are your BD and capture people embedded with your delivery organizations or with a dotted line to you, perhaps? Or do they all report to you? In other words, what is the CGO accountable for versus the client-facing delivery executive?
We've gone back and forth on that. As it stands right now, they're all solid line to me, but I execute it as their dotted line to me. I expect my business developers, my BDEs, my capture managers, and my technologists, I have aligned to individual sectors, and I have a growth lead for each one of those sectors. I expect them to be responsible to their sector president, and those sectors range from anywhere from basically $1 billion to $2 billion. I expect them to do that, and then on the back end, we'll have proposal ops, our kind of capture excellence side, evaluation of things, our pricing teams, and that sort of stuff. But I was a guy who was in a division of an organization, and I never felt that I was aligned to some corporate construct. I felt that I was part of the organization that I was responsible for growing business for. And that's the way I want them to feel, regardless if it's been dotted or solid line. We moved it to a solid line construct purely because it was ease of budgeting. I had the responsibility in the organization of talking about it from a monthly expense perspective, so it was easier to solid line it to me just so I could have easy visibility to that, but they're really aligned to our sectors. And as far as what I have responsibility for, everything. I mean, my job is to make sure the company's successful. So it doesn't matter if it's sitting in a sector, or if it's a $200,000 thing or a $1 billion thing. If it's a $200,000 thing, I lost it. If it's a $1 billion thing, everybody else did all the work they did to win it. That's just the way it goes.
Any other questions? Going once, twice? Oh, see, it always works.
Question. So I know, Lyndsey, you mentioned the incentive structure, that you mentioned, time off. But I'd like to hear, what has worked, in your experience, the panel, as to what drives people and how can you incentivize for small businesses, specifically, what can you do? Because you were trying to use the existing resources, right? You don't have dedicated 10-person team, for example. So I'd like to hear more, what could we be doing?
Absolutely. So I do monetary proposal bonuses for the entire proposal team upon win. Obviously, if we lose, I can't bonus you on money I didn't get. So, but we go down to the lowest level technical person, and they are bonused out financially in that following paycheck as soon as the money comes in, the invoice comes into us. I'll Teams message or call every single one of those people and thank them for their time. I will also give very public recognition down to the lowest level. CEO, CFO, COO, we'll do all hands. I'll do it again publicly. I have found people really thrive for that public recognition and thanking. And then about, 3 to 4 years ago, Dev went to a flexible time off policy rather than a banked time off policy. And with the folks on, I know folks on program, it can be difficult depending on contract type, but from anybody supporting the proposals, I push it hard. If they worked a 70, 80 hour for 2 weeks, go take a week off, take a couple of days off, that time to yourself, unplug, I don't want to hear from you, come back when you're rested. I also, for my direct team, I have different incentives for that team because they're just on all the time. So I've done incentive trips for them if we meet or exceed our goal. So I'll set benchmarks. If we meet, we get this. If we exceed, maybe we get this. So that's helped a lot too. And another thing, and then I'll stop yapping, is our founder is actually still very hands-on in the company. He's supporting tech challenges. He's working proposals. He's in the trenches with these people, and I really believe our employees respect that. They love that he's still showing that drive and for the mission, and I think that really drives people to keep working for him as well.
Just a quick adder, a lot of the same things she said are key to what we did. We did have a number of cases, though, where we didn't just reward the win, because a lot of times you have a great proposal, great solution, and you priced it wrong, or the intel was wrong, or any number of reasons. So in a number of cases, especially for the direct staff, where you're asking for them to go above and beyond, we would incentivize and bonus, because I now have great proposal content I can reuse. So you have to be mindful of that, because you obviously want to really incentivize the wins, but you got to recognize that people are putting in the effort, and you want to make sure that your knowledge management is taking care of that, and not just assuming that it's getting lost. But a lot of the same things. We had a bounty concept as well that we would pay out.
Panelists, I really appreciate you guys being here today. Thank you. A round of applause for our panelists, please. Just a quick reminder, we're going to start back up here at 3:10 for the AI innovation session with Aaron. I encourage everyone to go check out our CX Lounge and meet with our partner RSM if you haven't already done so. So thanks, everyone. We'll talk here in a second.